And growing up, it was always instilled in us how lucky we were to be in the US. When I was in school, you needed a permission slip to watch a Disney movie. But now they can change their gender and the parents don't know about it.
Put you in a dress and call you Brenda when your name's Brendan.
So I looked it up. I said, how did they do this? So this is how they did it. The Attorney General of the state of California used your tax dollars.
The parents' tax dollars
to sue the school
parents.
district so parents can be kept in the dark.
It's been now over 2 years you've been in the Assembly. What has been the most surprising thing?
This might be controversial, but...
All right, Assemblyman Bill Essayli, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really glad you're here. Welcome to the studio, and thank you for leading the charge in this crazy state of California.
Appreciate it. I'm happy to be out of Sacramento right now and here at this podcast with you. And there's a lot to talk about.
Yes, especially in the last few weeks, we're seeing so much destruction happening in California, and some of it's connected to political leadership, I think.
I think a lot of it is. Yeah. I mean, just the fires alone are not, climate change didn't just swoop in one day and cause all this. It's decades of failed policy and leadership. And unfortunately, people are paying the consequences right now for that.
Okay, there's so much to talk about there, and you had a viral set of tweets about that, and I think your voice is really important right now. Before we get into it, though, for people who are not familiar with California state politics, I'd love to hear more about your background, how you got into politics, what made you run for California Assembly.
Well, that's a really good question. I probably have a more untraditional route into politics than others there. This is my first time running for office. When I ran for the state assembly, I was a former prosecutor. I had no intentions of running for office. I enjoyed being a prosecutor, both locally at the DA's office and at the U.S. Attorney's office. But it really hit a tipping point in California where they were basically decriminalizing, a lot of these laws, and it was just causing havoc on the community. And I was seeing how it was affecting victims and police officers and morale. And eventually I'm like, who's making these laws? And I just took a look at the legislature, and it's just the most unserious, unqualified buffoons you've ever met. And they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea how these laws affect people. And they just pass law after law. And so there was an opportunity to run. I was approached by the party. They were looking for a quality candidate.
Where in California is this?
This is Riverside County. So I grew up in Corona, so it's my hometown. And I got approached, and it was a big decision. I had to leave my job under the Hatch Act. You can't run for office as a prosecutor, as a federal prosecutor. So I had to leave my job and run. And then in 2022, I got elected. And that's how I got in there. But I would say most people tend to work their way up. So they do local office, and then they move up, and then they run for office. So it was definitely a shocking experience to go through the process to get elected. And then I would say I definitely wasn't prepared for what it was like to be up there. I really thought that I would be working with people who had the best interest of the public in mind and our state, and that every decision was driven by that motivation. And it's just not the case.
I want to hear that experience, of course. I'm curious, though. You said you're a federal prosecutor. My understanding is you're the son of Lebanese immigrants.
Yes.
So you have this American dream story. Can you share more about that?
Yeah.
And also, did you think growing up that I might run for office one day?
That's a great question. So my parents both fled from the Lebanese Civil War in the 80s. They came here to the U.S. legally. I always have to say that because people tend to conflate the two things. They came here legally, and then I was born here in Southern California, born and raised, me and my sisters. And growing up, it was always instilled in us how lucky we were to be in the U.S. because my parents, having grown up basically overseas, and they see what it's like to have a corrupt government, non-functioning government. I mean, it's dangerous. It's clean streets. It's all this stuff. And they always instilled how lucky you are to be born in the U.S. and to be a U.S. citizen. That always stuck with me, how special it was. And then I was always a student of history and American government. I loved it. I love learning American history. And what stood out to me about America is like what makes you American has nothing to do about where you're from, what your race is, what your religion is. It all has to do about whether or not you have this common belief that God gives you rights, and from that, you loan them to the government, and that's where rights are derived from. That's why America is exceptional. People don't understand what that means. It's exceptional in the sense of we view government's power and duties differently than the way other governments always have. So that always stuck with me, and I always wanted to enter a career of public service. Whether, initially I thought I wanted to be a police officer. I ended up going to law school, becoming a prosecutor. So I always saw it as a matter of public service. I never really, said I was going to run for office. That wasn't really a goal of mine, and it just sort of worked out that way.
And then when you were approached in I guess it would have been 2021.
Yeah, it was before that, but yes, I was approached to run by some of the people in the party. Yes.
So you were just minding your own business as a federal prosecutor in Riverside County, and I'm just curious that process. And the reason I'm kind of exploring this is because there is no doubt a machine in California to develop and to put in power Democrat talent.
Yes.
Well, whether you can argue are they really talented or not, whatever, they are in power in California, and they're the majority by any stretch, right? So what is the Republican Party was doing something right to find you. We're going to get into your position, your public policy positions, many of which we agree on. I mean, you're a solid leader that's I think a rising star. So I'm curious what that process was like for you, for them to say, hey, we got to get Bill. Yeah. He's a prosecutor right now. He'd be perfect. We're going to recruit him, and we're going to get him into the assembly.
It was, it's all about relationships. So I interned for Congressman Calvert in college. I worked on his campaign. I always was involved a little bit in politics and campaigning, but not from a career standpoint, just because it was something that interested me. In law school, I worked at the Bush White House in the White House counsel's office. I was an intern there. I interned for Speaker Gingrich, also in school. So I had been involved in politics that way. I just never saw it as a career path for me. So I had those relationships, and from that relationships is where I was approached. But I think you're right. The Republican Party does not have a good organizational process right now of going out and recruiting candidates to run at every level of office and having people set up ready to go for higher office. I will say the one thing that's difficult for Republicans versus Democrats. With Democrats in their it's party first. The party comes first. It's these people, they have no principles. They don't believe in anything. All they believe in is power and growing their power. So it's a lot easier to keep people together in a group when they're all aligned on that central mission statement. I would say Republicans, it's a little harder because they're all very principled. They have different beliefs. They come from different backgrounds. They're not really willing to compromise any of their principles or belief in the name of a political organization. So that's why you see a lot of more party infighting, or if you have two Republicans who want to run in a seat, it's very hard to convince one of them to not do it. Where the Democrats, it's like, oh, okay, well, two of you want to run for here. Okay, how about we put you in this seat here and you in that one? They don't really care as long as they're getting power and they're moving up. So I will say it's something that makes it a little difficult for Republicans to sort of be as organized and united as the Democrats, is the fact that we have very strong beliefs. And we're a Big Ten. There's a lot of different strong views within the Republican Party.
That's definitely true. It's interesting you said that about your experience with the Democrats in California, is that it really is about power and not principles. Mm-hmm. Can you share more about what you've seen being in the assembly? And maybe let's start with this. What has been the most surprising thing? It's been now over 2 years you've been in the assembly, right?
Yes.
Or going on 2 years.
Yeah, I just finished my first term. So
you just finished your first term.
Year.
What's been the most surprising
thing? Well, I'll break those into two things. With the Democrats, it's very obvious. I mean, there's 20 Republicans and 60 Democrats right now. It was 18 Republicans last year. But anyway, the overwhelming majority are Democrats. We know from behind the scenes, they don't all agree with each other or their policies, especially when it comes to public safety. A lot of them come from more moderate districts and they don't want the criminal justice reforms. A lot of them are a little bit more pro-business. But when it comes down to time to vote or pass policies, you'll never see any dissent. You'll never see any opposition from within their party. They have a face as being united, and they will vote together as a block every time. So that's just what I've seen. Even though I know a lot of them do not believe in what they're voting for, they still do it anyway in the name of the party, because none of them want to be singled out or attacked. They will be attacked. We had actually one Democrat When Newsom had the oil special session, he wanted to go after oil companies. There's one Democrat that represents an area where there's a lot of oil workers, and she voted against this tax that Gavin wanted. She was the only one. They had Gavin Newsom in our little member lounge in the back, and they were taking members back there one by one if they were not supporting the thing to sort of
to talk
persuade
to
them.
the governor
yes,
himself.
to get talked to by the governor. So everyone got in line. She was the one voted against it. Immediately, they removed her from her committees and punished her. They had to make an example out of her.
Are they going to primary her, or put
They
up
didn't primary or anything, but
okay.
they made her basically irrelevant in the legislature. So they took away her committee assignments. So that's where a lot of them want to be on certain committees. That's where you get a lot of power and you get to affect specific areas. So they removed her and basically made it very clear that she was being marginalized within the party. And so that wasn't so much about her. It was more to send a message to the other Democrats. So that's how they behave. It's like a mob, if you will, and they don't tolerate any dissent from within. They rule with an iron fist.
7 Weeks Coffee is America's pro-life coffee company on a mission to fund the pro-life movement one delicious cup of coffee at a time. And they check every box. This is pesticide-free, mold-free, organically farmed, low-acid coffee that is absolutely delicious. Why is it called 7 Weeks Coffee? Because at 7 weeks, the baby is the size of a coffee bean. That's why 7 Weeks Coffee donates 10% of every single sale, including the sale you can make today, to pro-life pregnancy centers. In fact, 7 Weeks Coffee has donated almost $1 million now, over $750,000 to pregnancy centers because of passionate coffee lovers like yourself. And because coffee always tastes better with a free gift, if you go to 7weekscoffee.com today and subscribe using the code Lila at checkout, you will get a free gift. You will get a very cute little engraved wooden and metal coffee spoon. And exclusively for the listeners of this show, you can go to 7weekscoffee.com. You can use the code Lila at checkout to get up to 25% off your first purchase as well as your free gift. Go to 7weekscoffee.com and don't forget to use that code Lila at checkout for up to 25% off your order when you subscribe.
You asked me what was the most surprising thing going up there. This might be controversial, but how weak and inept most of the Republicans are, and it's exactly how the system wants them to be, and how easily or how willingly they are to acquiesce to the system. And that was the most shocking to me. I really believed I was getting elected and going up there to join a group of rebels, a group of fighters, and we're going to be united and taking on the corrupt Democrat machine. And that was not my experience at all. At all. It was from day one of, we have to work together. We got to get some wins for our district. We have to be able to pass a law or two. And I'm just like, well, the only way you could do that is if the Democrats let you. So why is that our goal? The goal for me was always to defeat the Democrats and to defeat their bills, defeat their legislation, and grow our party. And I would say at least half or more of the Republicans, their goal is to get something done, which is code word for let's go along and get along.
How do you defeat the Democrats when it's 20 versus 60?
Well,
what does that even look like?
For me, because people ask me, why are you running for office? That was a question I would get by the lobbyists a lot. And at first I thought, they're like, this is what's funny. The lobbyists ask you things like, oh, you're so smart. You're so talented. Why do you want to run for office? And at first
that's really sad.
At first I thought like, oh, okay. Like that's kind of a compliment. They're like, you're too smart for this. Why do you want to run? And then I realized it wasn't a compliment. It was, we're not going to be able to bullshit you. Oh, sorry. I don't know if that's allowed.
Go for it. No, we're good. We're good.
We can't BS you. Mm-hmm. And, you're actually going to like read the bills and you're not going to do what we tell you to do. That's what I've learned quickly is what that was code word for.
Meaning you are not going to vote for bad legislation, even if it's some sort of trade that they're trying to get some little teeny win.
Even if it's not bad legislation, the way it works up there is these people hand you checks. You have an event, they give you $50,000, $60,000 in checks, and then they have the right to show up to your office anytime and pitch a bill to you or ask you to vote for a bill. It might be a good bill, it might be a bad bill, but they expect you to basically support them when they need support. Well, I don't offer blind support to anyone or anything. So they still come in and I would have a lot of questions. And sometimes, a lot of times I wouldn't support
You're
it.
an attorney, so it sounds like you're actually doing your homework.
Yes.
I'm married to an attorney, so I know you read the bill, you read the contract. You actually, you've had to write them. You have to, as a prosecutor, you had to pay attention to the details. And I think that is a unique skill. I will just say to have it's a hard skill at minimum. And I think a lot of people in politics, if they don't come from that kind of a background, it's not natural to them. They're maybe not going to do that. They're going to skip that step.
Yeah, and they may not know how to read it.
That's so crucial for making law.
The problem too in Sacramento, there's so many bills. It's not even a matter of do they know how to read it or not. Do they care enough to read it? Because we vote on so many bills. I will say most bills are not that consequential. They're kind of run-of-the-mill type stuff. They do have consequences, but it's not going to impact like a big part of the public. And a few bills that stand out that, it's a big deal. But there's so many politicians who this is the best job they're going to ever have. You get paid $120,000 a year for this job. Everyone calls you honorable this, honorable that. You get treated kind of like little royalty up there. The lobbyists invite you on grand trips around the world. All paid, no questions asked. They're going to stay in castles in Ireland. They're staying at the Four Seasons in Hawaii, all at the dime of the lobbyists. You get invited to dinners, you get parties, you're the funniest person in the room, you're the best looking person in the room, yada, yada, yada. It's all designed to get you to be friends with the lobbyists and to do what they want when they want you to do it.
Who are these lobbyists?
Well, they're very charismatic and highly paid people by corporations that hire them up in Sacramento, and their job is to lobby and represent the interests of their clients.
What are you saying? What would you be the top three, let's say, lobbyists that are not actually working to advance conservative principles, but are maybe most easily buying off? Well, certainly Democrats, but some Republicans
all
too,
of
would
them
you say?
Do it. I mean, even like we have like Cal Chamber, which you think represents businesses, and they don't. They represent so I just got to back up. Most of these lobbyists, it's kind of like a law firm. So they're lobbyists, but they have multiple clients. So they might represent 5-6 businesses. These lobbyists, most of them are hardcore Democrats. They came from the legislature. That's why they have the relationship with all the legislators and stuff. So they themselves are hardcore Democrats. And they get hired by big corporations, and then they give terrible advice. They say, oh, okay, well, we can't defeat this bill, but I can make it a little better if we work with the Democrats. So give me a budget. I'll make a bunch of donation to the Democrats, and I'll get them to make this bill not so bad and like a little less bad. And I can get some Republicans to support it too. That's just sort of the way they approach things. They don't really want to take on the system. But I don't want to single out any one lobbyist. They all do it, but they're doing their job. That's their job. Like, I don't fault the lobbyists. It's the legislators who are elected to represent the public. So I will see myself as the public's lobbyist anytime in a meeting with a lobbyist, because they're going to come in and they're going to explain why this bill is good for their industry or their client. And I'm always asking, is it good for the public? I'll give you one example, just concrete. There's a group called the BIA, the Building Industry Association, and they represent a lot of the home builders. And they tend to be very conservative, and they support a lot of Republicans. Well, we voted on an issue last year. They wanted to put a bond, I think it was Prop 2 or something, on the bond, $10 billion for school infrastructure. Okay, mind you, we have a $300 billion budget. We have plenty of money. If we want to spend money on schools, we should spend it in the budget instead of giving money to illegal immigrants and things like that. But no, they couldn't get that money in there, so they proposed a bond to put on the ballot to go into more debt to pay for this infrastructure. Now, this group, though they're conservative, they supported it because they would benefit from most of the projects.
Meaning they would be the one running the projects.
Yeah, or they would get the contract to build the projects. $10 billion, a lot of money for an industry.
Was that on, you're saying that was something that the people voted on? It was a proposition?
And it passed. It passed. I was opposed to it.
And was that because the Republicans were telling the Republican voters you should vote too?
This is what happened. I didn't know.
Bipartisan,
like we were voting
nonpartisan?
on it. We had no conversation before. We go on the floor, and our leadership turns to all of us because we kind of sit in a group, and they say, "Okay, everyone, lay off this one." And I was like, "Lay off what?" I mean, that means don't vote against it. Lay off of it. These are our friends. Anytime someone says "our friends" up there, it's code word for these are our donors.
And that's because they were builders.
Yeah, there are.
But they were going to, put the state more in debt to do this building.
Yes.
And
So
that's
it benefits the industry. It'll benefit the Republicans because they'll get more donations from that industry. But the public is going to go into debt $10 billion, and it'll cost us about $20 billion by the time it's paid off.
Wow.
I was the only Republican to vote against it. The only one. Because our leadership basically gave the signal to the rest of the Republicans, lay off this. And to me, that was a really critical moment because I'm like, this is against our principles. Republicans have said it's in our platform. We don't support bonds. We should be paying for things in our budget in a responsible way. We don't need to go more into debt. Then Did
you get in trouble?
No, I don't get. I don't work for them, so I don't get in trouble. I've already been. Don't believe me.
You were already taken off the committee.
This is funny. When you get up there, when I got up there, everyone asked me. I always get.
Gavin Newsom didn't give you a talking to.
No,
I guess you're on the wrong side for that
Newsom.
one, anyways.
When you get up there, I was fascinated by the questions you get asked, and if I get the same question from more than one person, I'm like, "What's going on here?" So when I got elected, the first question I get asked is, "What do you want to do next? What do you want to do next? What is your goal?" I'm like, well, I just got here. What do you mean? What do I want to do next? Well, do you want to go to Congress? Do you want to do this, do that? And I found out very quickly that they want to know what you want so they can use it as a form of control. So if they know like, oh, your goal is to go to Congress or to be whatever, then they're going to say, oh, we can help you. We're your friend. And then we will use that as sort of like how to get you. The best advice I ever got was don't ever let them know what you want. Because if they know what you want, they'll know how to control you.
Interesting.
So that's the first thing they try to figure out. What do you want? Do you want to pass a bill? Do you want to be on a really special committee? Do you have higher office aspirations?
Do you want to go to the Four Seasons
Whatever.
in Hawaii?
Do you want to go on the trips?
Want to run for Congress?
They want to know what your calling card is. And with me, I have no calling card. I will be on no committee. I'll pass no bills. I don't care. I am here to be a opposition party. I'm here to stop the radical agenda of the Democrats.
Huge thank you to our sponsor, Good Ranchers. GoodRanchers.com is American meat delivered. This is meat 100% sourced in the United States from American farmers and ranchers. You can get your beef, your pork, your poultry, your seafood, all from GoodRanchers.com. The steaks are absolutely delicious, I know from personal experience, and even better is their chicken. I love it. It's tender, juicy, flavorful, all the things that you could want. And because it's a new year, if you order today using the code Lila, if you order any subscription box, you will get one whole free year of a free add-on of your choice. That's a free add-on of ground beef, chicken breasts, I highly recommend those, salmon, or bacon. And if you use the code Lila at checkout, you will get not only your free add-on for a year, but you will get $25 off your first order, as well as fast free shipping. That's GoodRanchers.com, American meat delivered.
And to go back to your question from a while ago, how do you defeat the Democrats? You defeat them by showing clear contrast. I really believe what Ronald Reagan said was true. Clear colors or, bold colors, not pale pastels. You have to show the bold contrast and difference between them and us. They're the party of corruption. They're the party of big tax and spending. We're the party of good governing, public safety, parental rights. You have to draw that contrast and you got to make it clear. And my colleagues have a hard time with that because they think, they really sit there and they're like, but you haven't passed a bill. You have to pass a bill. I go, why do I have to pass a bill? I go, nobody elected me. When I was running for office, I didn't have a voter come up to me and say, you know what I need in my life? More laws and regulations, please. No one elected me to do that. So we are not a bill factory. We do not need more laws. We need to stop a lot of this stuff and probably reverse a lot of the laws that we have on the books.
It sounds very refreshing to me as a California resident. And I know I can see why, it's hard for you to get in trouble with the Republican Party in California because I'm sure your constituents, they elected you, obviously. They love you. They want you to do what you're describing is needed in the assembly, in the legislature. Okay, let's say you're doing that. Let's say like your vision, this approach kind of catches fire. There's a few more Republicans that are like, yeah, I'm going to be a gunslinger now. Like enough is enough. They still outvote us by, how many? What is it? 80-20? What's the percentage of Republicans and Democrats in the state legislature?
Now it's 20. So it's good news.
To 60.
Yeah, to 60. There's 80 total.
80 total. Okay, yeah. So that's obviously 3/4 is Democrat, and that's just the assembly.
Yes.
So
it's also a similar number in the Senate.
So we're really. We're in no position right now to be inching toward, we're not at any close to the majority number. Can we even get close to a majority number? And is the pathway to getting to a majority number, taking back control of California for, let's not even say the word Republican, let's just say the word less government corruption, less government control.
Common sense.
More common sense. Yes, let's say that's the vision. So what does that look like over the next decade?
In California, you don't need the majority. You just need to break the supermajority. So the magic number in California is 27 in the assembly. If we get to 27, we're at 20 now, we just have to get to 27. We can now all of a sudden stop a lot of the radical policies in the state, because a lot of things have to be done by either a constitutional amendment or you need 2/3 to pass a budget, or used to. So they can't raise a tax without 2/3. So if we break the 2/3 control the Democrats have, all of a sudden Republicans become relevant again in the legislature.
When was the last time we had 27 Republicans in the assembly?
I think we lost the supermajority. I think it was within the last decade. I don't have the exact date on me. But
it wasn't too long ago.
It wasn't too long ago. I mean, look, we had Arnold up until 2010.
Correct. That's a great point. We had a Republican governor.
I think we lost the supermajority, and then we broke it, and then we lost it again. So it was one of those things where we didn't have it, then we had it back, then we lost it again. And I want to say it was like maybe 2014 or something. So it's not that far into the distant past, and things can change very quickly, as you're seeing like in LA right now, what's going on. I mean, the public can radically change quickly. But I want to say this is very important. We may not have the votes to stop anything in the legislature, but we have a voice. And we have been successful in defeating a lot of bad policies by simply turning up the heat, getting the public's attention on a single subject. It's very hard in Sacramento because we don't have much media, and the Democrats sort of control everything. But you saw this with that bill we did, I think it was SB 14, that was made the trafficking of minors a felony, right? The sex trafficking of minors as a serious felony. That was dead. And it was because we basically got the attention that, look, the Democrats killed this bill to make sex trafficking of minors a serious felony. And the media attention and the public's attention got so strong that Democrats had to give in to it. We've defeated a lot of other bills in similar ways where we bring light to it, bring attention to it, we activate the public, and the Democrats cave and they don't pass that. So we can still be effective. And that's why for me, a lot of it is about comms. It's not about votes. It's about a strong comms opposition having...
Because your boss is the people at the end of the day.
Our boss is the people. It's the public. And the public doesn't support most of the crap that goes on in Sacramento. They just don't know about it. So that's why I see our job is to shine a light and let that be the disinfectant up there. And by doing that, the public will learn who Republicans are, what we stand for, because often we get defined by our opposition. The Democrats tell us what we are. We're racist and we're sexist and we hate women. It's all this crap, right? And that's if that's all people hear, that's what they believe. Which is why for me, kind of going in, the issue of parental rights was so big to me, because I saw this as really an opportunity. I go, this is an issue. Parental rights is an issue that transcends politics, political boundaries, ethnic boundaries. Everyone cares about their kids. And when they hear that this party and this government wants to come in and interfere in the relationship between the parent and the child, and they want to raise your kid, and they want to teach them things that you may not agree with, and they want to tell them they can pick their own gender and all this, people don't support that. And so that's why I've been a big advocate for parental rights, and I've used that as a tool to draw a contrast between us and the Democrats, and I think it's had some effect. The 2 seats that we picked up were both in Riverside County, my neighboring seats. It's a big family-oriented community, Riverside County, Inland Empire, and I believe that parental rights is a big issue, and why Hispanics and Latinos are now starting to turn more towards the Republican platform.
Can you share for people's awareness about the law? I believe it has gone into effect that basically says that you can keep it a secret. Like if you're a teacher, you can keep gender confusion, I'm going to call it confusion, a secret from the parents of that minor child.
Yeah, you have to back up a little bit. I'm glad we have time to do this because this is a big deal. So when I got up there, first got elected, there were all these lawsuits going on. Parents were suing school districts. They said, the school is transitioning my kid and I don't even know about it. They gave him a new name. new pronoun. And you know, a lot of parents only found out about it because of COVID and the remote learning.
Crazy.
And then they could hear the teacher call their kid a different name. And like, wait, that's not their name. Why are you calling them that?
How old are we talking? This is like high school or?
K through 12. There's no age restrictions on it.
It's
so
wild.
that's when it first came to my attention. And I'm very good friends with like Harmeet Dillon and some of the other attorneys have been advocating on this. And he's like, wait a minute. When I was in school, when you were in school, probably, you needed a permission slip to watch a Disney movie. I remember that. Like, we watched The Lion King and our parents had to sign permission for us to watch a Disney movie. It was crazy, right? But now they can change their gender and the parents don't know about it.
Put you in a dress and call you Brenda when your name's Brendan.
Yeah, this made no sense to me. It's
literally insane.
So I looked it up. I said, how did they do this? So this is how they did it.
Hey guys, Happy New Year, and make sure you have downloaded Hallow app. Hallow app is the #1 prayer app in the world, and it's a great way to jumpstart or deepen your relationship of prayer with God. Hallow app has over 10,000 prayers on it. It has amazing scriptural studies and deep dives into scripture. You've got Bible in a Year. You've got amazing prayers and meditations led by people like Jonathan Rumi of The Chosen. And you have sleep stories, kids content, and so much more. If you're wondering on a daily basis, how do I remind myself to carve out time for God and maybe have the guided prayer sessions or the scriptural readings or the spiritual readings that are going to strengthen your relationship with God, Hallow app is a great place to start. And if you use the link in the description today, you can get 3 months free at hallow.com/Lila. Get 3 months free of the Hallow app at hallow.com/Lila.
They passed a regulation in the California Department of Education under Tony Thurmond that just said that children have a right to privacy. This is not true. It's never, ever, ever. There has been no court cases have ever said kids enjoy privacy from their parents. That's not true. But they just made it up. They said children have a right to privacy and you cannot reveal their gender preferences to their parents without their consent. It was just an advisory and they put it in a regulation. They sent it out to all the schools. And then our school districts, did they just take this as the word, like the gospel? Well, the Department of Education said so. So they have all these liberal law firms that represent most of the school districts, and they tell the board members, this is the state law. You have to follow this. You can't do anything about it. So a lot of school districts fell in line, and they went along with this. And I'm so tired of these weak elected officials. I don't really care if you're a councilman or a school board member. Your job is not to take direction from some lawyer or manager or city manager or superintendent. You're the elected official, you're the boss. And if you don't agree with something, you don't have to follow it. And you fight it. But so many of them want to just we have to get along. We have to get along.
Why?
Why? I don't know.
But what if they were sitting here, they'd say, well, we have to get along because otherwise there will just be chaos and not rule of law. Like, what would be their argument for this whole, like, we can't fight?
If you really push them, it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. And that's when I think people are in politics for the wrong reason. It's not a job. It's not meant to be like, you know,
a stepping stone.
And it's not a stepping stone, and it's not meant to be comfortable. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. Okay. So, so this is what I did. I said, okay, they did this regulation. Let's expose it. And the way I thought the best way to expose it was I wrote a bill. It was one of my first bills as an assemblyman, AB 1314. And it was very simple. All it said was, if the school is going to change the record of a student to reflect a new gender or name, you have to inform the parents within 3 days in writing. It's really simple. I'm like, I wrote it, so I was like, there's no way any rational person can be opposed to this. So I wrote that bill. As soon as I introduced it, all hell broke loose. How many pages
was that bill, by the way?
It was like probably 2 pages or less.
Probably one of the shortest bills in the history of the legislature.
Well, they have to put a little history and whatever, but the actual text is probably like entering one sentence into the education code. That's it. As soon as I introduced it, all hell broke loose. The liberals lost their mind. They came out against me that I'm like the new Ron DeSantis. I'm transphobic.
That's a compliment. You're the new Ron DeSantis.
It's a hate bill. I'm going to get trans kids killed. It was all this like crazy rhetoric.
So evil.
And then they doxed me. They did all like, yes, it was crazy stuff.
What do you mean they doxed you?
Like the Twitter Antifa people, like they put my home address up, they put my cell phone up, the whole thing. And, you know, I don't know if they know anything about Lebanese people, but that just made me more committed to my cause. I'm like, I'm not scared. It's like, you're not going to scare me. I sleep with a gun. I'm okay. Come on, whatever. I'm not scared. I'm not going to back down. So I doubled down. They refused to give my bill a hearing. They wouldn't even hear the bill. So they said, we're not giving your bill a hearing. And they shut it down. And then, all the Republicans came to me like, oh, that was a good job. Like, nice try. But now maybe you could do some like regular bills. I said, oh, no, I'm not done. So what I did is I got together with the Family Council and Pastor Jack Hibbs' group and some others. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I know this is a big issue, and I know that this law is constitutional. In fact, what they're doing is unconstitutional. So we took my bill and we wrote it as a school board policy. And then we started having school boards introduce that as local policy. So Chino Hills was the first school board, and they adopted a school board policy that said, we will be notifying parents when a student wants to change their gender and their records.
Amazing. That went into effect. Tony Thurman, the superintendent, came down to oppose it. And if you haven't seen that meeting, you should watch it. He gets his 2 minutes to talk like every other person. He tries to go over. And then Sonia Shaw, who's the president, is amazing. He kept trying to talk, and she said, no, you're not Sacramento. You sit down, you're done. And basically had security escort him out. This is superintendent for the state.
Yes. Sonia Shaw.
And Chino Hills kicked him out. But what's amazing to me is like that whole thing would not have happened if someone...
Correct.
hadn't noticed that this other crazy thing was happening. That wasn't even a bill that was voted on. It was like through the vast bureaucracy that now exists, this machine that was just spitting out these insane policies that are affecting the lives of our children and our business owners and our people of faith and just all the people, right? And then you created a bill, which would have been a great bill if it had gotten passed, but it basically became effectively a communications weapon.
Yes.
And then it led to concrete change outside of the system of the Democrats, because like right now the system is unworkable, but you still leverage that to get this thing done at the school board level.
Yes, and it became a thing. And then the news started covering it. It brought more attention to it. And then we had like a dozen school boards pass this policy. The Attorney General responded by suing the school districts. They used our tax dollars. Just want people to understand this. The Attorney General of the state of California used your tax dollars.
The parents' tax dollars to
sue the
school
parents. Districts so parents can be kept in the dark. And meanwhile, crime is through the roof. You've got, all the break-ins and the robberies and the prisoners being let out. He doesn't give a damn. But we have to go after these parents and make sure that, their kids can be transitioned at school without their knowledge or consent. So they went to court. They lost. So eventually
the state lost.
The state kept losing, yes, because the judges said this is not unconstitutional. The parents are allowed to know what's going on with their kids. So finally in Sacramento, they couldn't take it anymore. So they passed the law that you just referred to. So they enacted a law late last year that basically invalidates these school board policies and says teachers cannot be forced to make that disclosure to the parents. So that's now state law in California. It is being challenged. It's in federal court, but I always tell people that the court system is very slow. So, it's going to be a while before it makes its way through the appellate courts and probably even up to the Supreme Court. But that's where we are.
Do you think if there was an up-down vote, the people of California were clearly educated on this issue, and they had an up-down vote of should parents be given knowledge that their child is basically struggling with gender dysphoria and now being called a different name and dressed a different way by their teachers? Should the parents be informed within 3 days? How would California vote?
If you frame it like that, I think it's like 90%.
It's
all about how you frame it, because if you watch the hearing on the assembly floor over this, it was madness. It was, you would have thought we were basically outlawing, all gay people or something.
Yeah.
It was one legislator after another going up and talking about how difficult it was for them growing up gay and what it was like. And I'm like, but that has nothing to do with this bill. Like, it's a school. They kept saying it's an outing bill. I go, it's not an outing bill. The student is making a change to their records. So this is only, by the way, the law only kicks in if the student wants to change their official records.
Crazy.
If he or she wants to be called something on the playground, that doesn't involve the school.
Even that, though, think about it, just like, again, super common sense.
Yeah.
Like, because what you're asking for is like so like extremely like bipartisan, reasonable. Everybody, it's a 90% issue. But like, even like, I think could also be a 90% issue if my 7-year-old is on a school playground and wrestling with gender identity and saying like, am I a boy? Call me a boy, and he's really a girl, or call me a girl, he's really a boy, etc. And the teacher intentionally hides that from the parent,
or worse, encourages them to consider transitioning.
It's so
you do have teachers. This was
it's
the whole.
It's not about the parents' rights. It's about it is, but it's most importantly about the child's well-being.
Welfare.
And there's no healthy child who's at war with the parents that is trying to love them. That is, you're destroying that child's identity.
Now,
but the common sense piece is like has vanished.
Well, it goes back to their agenda, and the whole thing underlying this topic, and that's why I always said they consider the parents dangerous. It's like, no, the parents are dangerous.
Because they think they own your kid.
It all comes down to who's going to raise the next generation of Americans.
Scary stuff.
That's what it's about. That's why people don't understand. This is a bigger issue than gender identity or ideology or any of that stuff. This is fundamental Marxism. Marxism knows you have to destroy the family unit. You have to pierce and destroy the parent-child relationship, because that's the biggest factor in how kids turn out is their parents. Their parents instill their values, their ethics, everything. The government wants to insert itself in as the parent and raise those kids. That's what this is all about. So if you allow the government to keep this secret, then you've surrendered your parental rights.
Well, and it's not just any government. It's an extreme left-wing, ultra-woke, ultra pro-abort, ultra pro-LGBTQ plus IA ideology government. Like, it's not just like a nice government trying to support families in general. They're like, let us have a little more involvement in your daily life. Here we are, government. Like, they have it is a truly extreme agenda that is a 10%, 90% issue. Meaning, if you put it before the people, your average Californian will be like, this is a bridge too far.
It's too much. But that's the thing. Most issues like that aren't put before the people like that. And when it comes down to voting, people vote over one or two things. And like the Democrats will flash the abortion card, right? Everything abortion. That's all. That's where Democrats are good at elections. They find one issue, it's emotional, and they think they could sway people, and they go all in on that. And the Republicans, we have like our 10-point plan.
I think with abortion, I mean, obviously that's a fight I've been in the last decade. And I'm just in recent years starting to move more into politics as I've been focused on like changing hearts and minds, right? But I've just seen like the utter lies that are being told. Like you were talking about how if you put it that way before people that, we're hiding gender confusion that your child is suffering with from the parents intentionally and, pushing the kid one direction. If you put it before the adults that way, the parents that way, 90% will be like, no, thank you. We don't want that. Similarly with abortion, if you put it before people, and we've actually just recently did some polling on this at Live Action, you say, okay, do you support, an abortion procedure that literally dismembers the baby? You can say fetus, the unborn child in utero, like a live dismemberment abortion. Do you support that? Vast majority say no. That's all second trimester abortions.
Yeah.
And people and that's legal in California, live dismemberment abortions. People have no framework for that. They do not see that because they're just told women's rights, health care.
Why are they so afraid of the ultrasounds? I mean, they're so afraid of these ultrasounds because they're worried that as soon as the mom sees that this is a living heart beating moving child, they're going to be more reluctant to terminate the pregnancy. I mean, they don't want people to actually think about it. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. But this is where, going back to comms and using things for communication devices, this is where the Democrats are really good. They're very good at packaging and narrative and then just echoing it over and over again. And I see the Republicans, we tend to be more on defense, and they're always offense. And that's why, for me, it's really important we start going on offense. And that's what parental rights was for me. That's offense. We're going on offense. We are declaring, no, this is an important right. Parents have to raise their kids. And by the way, when you go vote, that's what Republicans stand for. And I always ask people, what do Republicans stand for? No one can ever give me a solid answer. And so I said, we have to stand for something. And I think we should be the party of parental rights in the state of California. I think that will really,
and common sense.
And common sense. But you have to have an issue that resonates with people and makes them, if they're going to make a hard decision, are you for, do you care more about abortion or parental rights? At some point, it's going to have to be a decision that you make at the ballot box.
Well, I think with abortion, I mean, Governor DeSantis is a great example. He's in a purple state. He passes the heartbeat law. He just defeated Proposition 4, which would have legalized abortion through birth. And he is wildly popular. I mean, yes, he's hated by some people, but he won by 1 million votes in his reelection. And so I think he's said, I'm not going to abandon the life issue.
No.
Like, I think there's some Republicans are like, well, let's just do the trans issue because I think we can make more headway there than the life issue. It's like, no, that issue can be just as hard if you let them take this ground by spreading their lies. You've got to fight the lies head on.
Yeah.
And with the life issue, it's like, no, abortion kills a baby. And it's not like empowering for women. Let's do better for moms and for women, and let's support them and their, get them good health care.
Yeah.
But killing babies is not going to be the path forward for California either. We got to do better and care for both patients, the baby and the mother. And just kind of talking candidly like that, I think is really powerful. But it's very also controversial, unfortunately, among some Republicans are like, stay away from the A word.
I know. Well, how about just funding or supporting the pro-life centers?
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to jump to, oh, you're going to lock up a woman for making this decision. It's like, okay, well, we don't have to go to that extreme. How about we just make sure women understand their choices and options? How about in school, we teach girls like, yes, you can have an abortion, but there's all these other resources available for you. And but they hate the pro-life centers. Like I see this up in Sacramento. They're bringing bills all the time to come after the pro-life centers. And I don't understand. I always say, are you pro-abortion or are you pro-choice? Because they always say they're pro-choice. If you're pro-choice, you should want to give the mom as many options as possible so she can make the right decision. But again, they're just so radical and fanatic, and it's I can't put my finger on it, but there's something demonic about it. But it's very bizarre.
I think abortion is demonic. Killing a baby, whether the baby's 8 weeks old or 18 weeks old, it's evil. It's just evil.
Mother Teresa talked about it at the prayer breakfast with the Clintons. I'll never forget that. I watched it later. I was very young at the time, but she says if a nation allows a mom to kill her own child, like basically what hope is there for the rest of us? I mean, it's just she really put it best. It is a difficult issue, and I understand that women. That's a time when if you're not married and you're pregnant, it's very scary. But that's a time where we should make sure they get all the resources so they can make an informed decision and not one that they're going to regret. I know personally some women that did have an abortion and they still regret it to this day.
Yeah, their stories are almost never told.
Exactly. So if you want to say pro-choice, I guess I'm pro-choice in the sense of I want women to have all the choices available to them, including access to pro-life centers and support. To be able to care for and take care of that kid.
Yeah, but it wasn't too long ago that I think this state was pro-life. That's not a full lifetime ago yet. So I think we can move it back, but it's going to take just going where the heat is and being afraid to make the contrast. Like, you want to support abortion up until birth. Like, we want to protect human life because human life is valuable and it's worth fighting for.
Well, we have big wins.
There's the contrast.
We have big wins. We got rid of Roe. Roe was a terrible case, and that's now opened it up so we can at least have these conversations. And I think the way to go about it is you put the Democrats on defense and make them vote on their extreme policies. So ban abortion in the third trimester. See if they vote for that.
At minimum.
You just kind of have to progressively dial it back.
I think that's a bill to expose their extremism.
Exactly.
Which is so raging. How do you have a faith, and how does that influence what you do?
Yeah, no, I was raised Muslim and grew up in a very conservative Muslim house. I got that question too, is like, oh, is this going to affect how you vote and stuff? I go, well, I see faith is important. I think you have to believe in a higher power because that's what our country is based on. Our country is based on, again, like I said, our rights come from God, and then we loan those rights to other people. So I think faith definitely guides your values and your morals, but it doesn't necessarily dictate, every vote or anything like that. I think people think a little too much of it. And also, I didn't run on that, so it's not like I was elected to be, I'm not into identity politics and, I'm the first Muslim in the assembly, which I was. But that's not why, my district
You weren't Democrat,
elected.
So you didn't get a special feature story.
No, in fact, the Democrats try to use it against me in the campaign.
Wow, interesting.
Yes, no, Democrats are the most racist people.
So you're only allowed to be Muslim and in politics if you're Democrat.
Well, it was kind of a dog whistle thing. They thought if the Republicans knew I was Muslim, they wouldn't vote for me, but it didn't matter anyway. So, but Look, I mean, I grew up taught that Muslims, Christians, Jews are part of the same family faith, and so a lot of our values are the same from what I know, what I understand. Yeah, again, I don't think we are a government that has freedom of religion and we accept all faiths and stuff. And so me being the first Muslim up there, I think it's just a reflection of our community and where we are now and the diversity up there. But yeah, it's notable, but not determinative, I would say, of a lot of my policies.
So when I look at the state of California, I think it's a no-brainer that we need to somehow break through, the wall of just entrenched decades now. I mean, you said, obviously we had Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they've developed this machine over time. And we have to break through that wall to have independent voices, independent ideas, and just like the incredible corruption that exists when there's such an incredible majority that they have. Like you said, we don't have even a third, right, in the assembly. So that seems like a no-brainer. And then I just look culturally at the state and I see what's happening with the LA fires. I see people, you could say, use the word red pilled, people saying this is just crazy, the response. They're very unhappy with the response of those that are in power. But in all of it, I see the power of people's communications that can make or break how they perceive reality. Like you were saying, comms are so powerful. And I do think that is a unique strength that someone like Gavin Newsom has had from the beginning, even before social media. And now he's trying to use the social media. And so, whether it's the issue of life, like their framework is, of course, you have a right to abortion. The correct truth is nobody has the right to kill a baby ever, period, right? Their framework is, we got to protect LGBTQ youth or whatever. The correct framework is we should love and protect everyone. But, creating wedges between children and their parents and transitioning little kids is sick. It's evil, right? So what's your, I guess, view going forward? I know you said, well, my constituents, I speak for them. I'm, their lobbyist basically. Yeah. But what's your view going forward in the larger communications and cultural strategy to advance the pro-life cause? Because I'm not happy with, let's just ban abortion in the third trimester. There's still little babies at 10 weeks old that deserve life, right? We got to fight for all of them. And that's a calm strategy. You have to lead with that, because if people don't even have that vision, we're never going to get there politically, right? So how do you see, your work going forward and the comm strategy you have? And I have to give you a shout out because you are crushing it on X. That's one of the reasons you're here, because I was seeing your X tweets. I'm like, we got to get, and one of the gals on our team was like, yeah, he's awesome. We got to get him in studio. And I'm like, this guy's doing it. Like he's playing Gavin Newsom's game, which is actually use comms effectively.
And he's lashing out.
Newsom at you?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
He lashed out at me on Twitter. So
what did he say?
I'm in a Twitter war with him. I basically called out his failed leadership and correlated that to the wildfires and how he didn't fund wildfire protection, all this other stuff. And then he quote tweeted and said that I voted against all this fire stuff, but basically I voted against his budget. So he's trying to gaslight me and tell people that I voted against all this fire stuff. But I like to remind him, I'm not the governor. And his budget passed without my vote. So he, by his own admission, his own policies and budget is ineffective. So I don't get his point anyway, but he's lashing out. But to your point, comms is so important. Republicans have been, as a party, so afraid to talk to outside groups, outside of their norm. They like to preach to the choir, as I say. So I think step one is you have to have spokespeople that reflect the community. And you're seeing that. The Republican Party is becoming extremely diverse. I mean, even here in California, we have a lot of Hispanics now within the party. The two districts that we picked up were predominantly Hispanic communities. We just did a press conference, and Leticia Castillo, who's amazing, she defeated a Democrat in a Democrat blue district. She gave a press conference in Spanish, and I'd never seen that before. So she's actually going into the community and telling them what the Democrats' agenda is for their families and their kids, and what she's going to do about it. You have to have spokespeople that look and talk like the community. Even for me, I understand the Muslim population isn't as big as the others. Muslims are conservative. They do not believe in abortion. They believe strongly in parental rights. They are a natural constituency for the Republican Party, but they've never had anyone really speak to them. And so when I go out and speak, I mean, I get a lot of people come up to me like, I'm Muslim and I'm Republican and I voted for Trump. It's like, you don't have to whisper. It's okay. But they're so afraid because the Democrats have basically beaten into them that Republicans are anti-Muslim and they're going to kill you, basically. So don't vote for them. So by just seeing me, it makes it okay for them to come out and say, oh, I'm conservative, I'm going to vote Republican as well. So I think step one is having the right spokespeople go into the communities and speak their language, or represent them. And two is you have to have a good product. You have to have a good product. It has to be something that is organic, it's authentic, it's something that resonates with people and they believe in. And like I said, that's why I really doubled down on parental rights, because I do think parental rights is that issue that really transcends culture, language, political registration, all of it. And you go in the heart of it. And I think that, to me, that's what I think California Republicans should be focused on and gaining grounds on. All the other stuff, taxes and regulation and public safety, I mean, we already have that. I mean, people already know about that and they know we're stronger on that, but that doesn't seem to move voters. So I'm looking for issues that actually move voters from the left to the right or make it okay for them to vote for us. And a lot of times I think people don't vote for something, they vote against something. So also making sure they understand what the Democrat Party is about, what their agenda is, what they want to do to your kids. I mean, you saw how they basically politicized this Project 2025, they took the heritage thing, like, look at all the scary things Republicans want to do if they get into power. Well, we should do the same thing and say, look at everything the Democrats want to do, against you and your family. And the deceiver in chief is none other than Gavin Newsom. I've never, ever seen anyone who could sit in front of a TV camera and speak to you and lie so convincingly. I think if he were to take a polygraph, he would actually believe what he
says. That's the scariest
so
kind of ideologue, is the one that believes what they're saying, even though it's objectively false.
Objectively false.
And it's a dangerous person to have in power. There is so much more. We're going to have you back because we got to do it. We got to do an episode just on Gavin Newsom.
We really should.
I've been reading books about his life and childhood and his trajectory, and I think there's a lot of lessons to learn, and also you got to know who you're fighting. I think that's part of it. But one thing I want to thank you for is having vision, because I think a lot of people in California who are conservative, who are Republican, who are maybe just moderate, and they just see what's happening and they're uncomfortable with it. They feel like, well, I'm just going to hold on for as long as I can. I don't think they have a sense that we can beat this, we can do this. And I think that you are starting to help forge that path. And I think a lot of things can change in a short time, like you were saying earlier.
Yes.
It's just a matter of having the passion and the grit and the vision to do it. So thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank President Trump, who's now back in office. I want to say no one has fought harder for our country, especially at a time when it looks so bleak and dark. No one thought he could come back and be president. And to have him this week now be the 47th president of the United States should give hope to all Republicans that we can win despite the enormous opposition that we get from the other side, which, by the way, I'm not seeing any protests. So I think they're defeated. So, I mean, it's really a model. We have to study what President Trump did and how to win back power and model that here in California.
Well, the thing that I think President Trump knows in spades is mass communications, like constantly communicating, constantly showing up. He's got major hustle and grit, and he continually will communicate. And I think that in and of itself, like you were saying earlier, is a secret to all of this.
He's a great marketer. The Gulf of Mexico will now be the Gulf of America.
It's very funny.
I'm all for it.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
We'll do this again.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. This is awesome. Thank you.
A huge thank you to our partner, EWTN. EWTN is the largest religious network reaching millions of people with the truth of the faith, entertainment, and news. Check them out at EWTN.com.